Welcome, everyone, to a very special episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd, and joining me is the Teal Queen herself, Professor Aubrey, and you have brought a friend to meet our friends at home.
Yay. I have brought a friend. My very best friend in the whole world, I'd say, is here, and she's going to talk to us about her brilliance and some new ideas that she has that are going to help us all live our best lives. That's pretty exciting. So let me tell you about her. Her name's Milly Morrow, and she lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And she is an amazing person who has been doing for over 25 years, almost 30 years now.
Yeah, 25 is good.
Yeah, 25 is good. I have to stop myself every time. I'm like, 20 years? Wait, no, 30 years. Wait,
I'm only 31. How can I be doing this for over 30 years? Yeah, it's not possible.
You've done so much in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, Milly and I went to college together many moons ago and graduated from the social work program at the University of Tennessee. Milly went on from there to become an amazing sexual assault advocate and organizer, really, as well as counselor, and has done tons of other stuff since then, including going to seminary, becoming an Episcopal priest, having a child, becoming a very well educated and experienced counselor of various types and advocates of various types. Basically, you're a servant of the people. A very good one. That the people who you serve should be very pleased to have you.
No bias. No bias for my very best friend in the world.
Nope.
The Teal Queen.
So Milly, very well educated, very well experienced, very brilliant person, is coming to talk to us about moral injury. Had you ever heard of this, Tim?
I have not. Now, for our friends at home who've never heard of that term before, what is moral injury?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking, Tim. So moral injury is, imagine that you know yourself to be a certain kind of person, right? You know yourself to be a certain kind of person, but then you have repeated experiences that challenge your self-understanding and that lead you to believe you're something other than what you know yourself to be. And this happens repeatedly and in high stakes situations. So we can give examples later. But basically, moral injury is the consequence of who we know ourselves to be being challenged repeatedly in high stakes situations such that we come out with the injury of no longer knowing ourselves in the way that we thought we did. So it can show up in various ways within the wheel of moral injury. It can be moral confusion. It can be moral decay that is, the product of various situations that maybe aren't so high stakes to situations that are high stakes. Throughout time when people have been looking at PTSD, particularly within the veteran population, this is where this field really emerged out of the work of understanding post-traumatic stress disorder. But then, and we can talk about this more about why, but then there came to be this other understanding of an additional injury through the treatment of PTSD. So then it was focused still on veterans, but just in the last 5-6 years, the research has expanded to look at populations outside of veterans. And this is where I come in, because my work has not been with veterans solely, but I'm now a part of this group of practitioners, clergy, mental health, that are looking at this moral injury as something unique from PTSD And it's really an injury that lies at the intersection of spirit and mental health.
How is moral injury different from guilt, shame, trauma, PTSD, or depression?
Yeah, that's great. So PTSD, moral injury are the causes of some of the symptoms you named, right? Like depression, anxiety, shame, guilt. So let's start. I think this is a fascinating conversation to me. What is the difference between guilt and shame? So I'll ask you both. Think of the last time you felt bad about something that you did, either in a high stakes situation or a low stakes situation. Just imagine it for a second. The last time, and I'll invite our listeners to do the same. Just the last time you felt badly about something that you did. And you might have thought to yourself, wow, man, that thing I did was shitty. That was a shitty thing I did. My behavior was less than on point, right? That's guilt. Guilt serves an amazing function for us as humans. It basically gets us back on track, right? Guilt is a socially functional feeling. However, and I'll invite you to imagine this, the last time you did something that you felt badly about, but then when you walked away, you thought, I am bad. I suck. I am shitty. I'm the worst. That's shame. Shame does not serve any social function, any emotional function, except to shut us down. It just shuts us down. Whereas guilt gets us back on track. Shame shuts us down, right? So moral injury is, the consequences of moral injury is shame. Who we know ourselves to be is so challenged by something we witness, something we do, or something we fail to stop from happening. And that at the end of it, we don't think, oh, wow, that was a really bad thing that happened, or I participated in, or I saw. We think, I am horrible and bad, or the world is horrible and bad, right? Rather than the context and the event, it's internalized in an existential quality, with an existential quality that's pervasive.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about the relationship between guilt and shame. And I think I always think of it as guilt is something that I feel because I've done something to someone else, right? Like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Feel guilty about doing it. Whereas shame is something I don't need anybody else to participate in. Like I can feel ashamed of things that I did that other people don't even notice happened. And so that it's a little bit different and sort of more inward looking. And
interesting. So you're saying that for you, you only experience guilt if the action you've participated in is known
or impacts someone else.
Right. But you can feel a sense of shame when something you've done really hasn't even impacted. It's a perception of yourself.
Or hasn't even occurred.
Yes.
Right. You can have shame about your own feelings.
Yes.
And stuff. But at any rate, shame. We know shame is horrid for people.
Yes.
In some of the materials you sent us before, one of the things that you talked about was that moral injury is caused by betrayal, usually by someone we trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can lead to moral injury.
Mm-hmm.
What are there some specific ideas or other ways of conceptualizing what an actual moral injury, what that wound would look like? Like what kind of betrayals are we talking about?
Mm-hmm. So again, going back to kind of the core understanding, which is still emerging, let's be clear, this is emergent work we're talking about here. But when we think about the core being that our perception of self or the world is challenged, right, over and over and over, to the point where there is an annihilation of the way that the beliefs that we're grounded in that help us function, right, every day. Like, I know myself to be, so I then function as. I know the world to be, so I function in it in this way. When that erodes to the point where there is no ground of self, I'm not grounded in any sense of self. It's like being completely disoriented, right? And when we're completely disoriented, have you ever been swept up in a wave? You're in the ocean, you're swimming, you're having a great time. The next thing you know, you're swamped, and you don't know what way is up, where to put your feet. And there's fear, right? It's a high stakes situation, right? Like, we're swimming in a big old ocean. We got to be able to get grounded and get back up and get back to, if you're disoriented, you can't. So moral injury in some ways feels like that, right? It's to that level. Now, we can have moral confusion in situations that we lack the tools or information to discern appropriately given who we are. That can be moral confusion, moral distress, right? Say you're a freshman in college, you're studying environmental science. You come to understand the impact on the climate from diesel, gasoline, you go home for Christmas, your parents have bought you a brand new Ford 150R. I don't know anything about cars. I think that's a car, but it's like a big truck that takes a ton of gas. It's horrible for the environment. But your parents worked so hard to buy that for you, right? They're giving it to you as an act of love. You're sitting there with these they're very different senses of something that's happening right in front of you. What do? That can be moral distress, moral confusion. Let's say you have been in a committed marriage for 20 years. That commitment, which I would call a covenant, that covenant is grounded in not contractual obligations, but in moral qualities, moral values, beliefs, right? It's grounded in something moral, who you know yourself to be, who you know, and then who you are together. And then you find out that person has been lying to you for 15 of the 20 years. Or you have been lying for 15 out of the 20 years. That is going to be a betrayal that can lead to moral injury without proper reframing, without restructuring the biography of who we are, who we were. That's what it takes in order to, but that is a monumental shift in who we know ourselves and the world to be. And may I say, regardless of which side you're on, whether you did the lying or you were lied to, it's a moral erosion of the way you know the world to be, and probably who you know yourself to be within it. So that would be an example of a higher stakes situation. And then, of course, soldiers in combat, they know themselves to be people who are protecting people. That's right. Why most people get into that work is because they want to protect. That's debatable, of course, on all, but within them, that's probably why. And then they go into battle and cause harm. And now I might be able to rationally say to them, yes, but that was the enemy. But deep down, they're like, no, man, that was a human. That was a human. Like, that's the deeper moral quality, is they're there to protect democracy or whatever, but humans, right? So may I ask you all a question?
Sure.
Of course.
And I'll start with Obs. But Aubrey, why did you get into the work you got into? What led you to do the work that you do in the world? Was it a religious belief?
No, I mean, I'd
Right.
say that I've done a variety of things in my life, and I think they're always motivated by feeling it's something I can make a difference for people.
That is the moral basis. You didn't go into it for religious reasons. You went into it for moral. That's a moral stance. I believe I have something to add value to the world, and that will create change for the good. That's a moral stance. Now, I imagine that throughout your time, you've had moments that was challenged. Like, oh, maybe this isn't causing good. Maybe this is causing harm. So we'll pause there. But Tim, same to you. The work that you've done, do in the world, why did you choose it?
Well, my 9 to 5 is taking care of dogs. I'm a dog handler, and
Great.
yeah, and ultimately,
Why did you choose that?
I chose it, cynically, so I didn't have to work with people. But two, I've always had a great affinity for animals, and I wanted to be able to just work with some dogs and, give them some care and affection during times that they're away from their family, because a number of dogs will have no problems and have fun at the daycare and leave happy, but there are some dogs that will show up and be scared and whatnot, and also have previous bad experiences with guys like me, and I'm 6'5" with a loud voice. So I wanted to give some of these animals like a different experience than what they may have experienced before.
That is a moral stance. You are seeking to repair harm that has been done by someone that looks like you and that you know yourself not to be. So imagine you cause harm one day because you scare a dog, or you go at it too fast, or and you do the opposite of your moral stance. Now, if you have a healthy, grounded sense of self that's pervasive within you and internalized, and you have a capacity to regulate your central nervous system, you think to yourself, I went too quickly at this dog. I'm going to give the dog some space. I'm going to come back to the dog later, and I'm going to repair. Life is 80% repair. But if we are crushed, or if our sense of self decays to the point where we don't have the capacity to seek the repair, because it takes that, right? I know we all know that in any relationship with self or other, we have to have the capacity to come back with confidence and compassion and clarity in order to repair. So the moral injury that happens for so many people because of betrayal might erode the sense of self to where we don't have the capacity to come back for repair. And so we stay in a loop of shame, now perhaps switching to knowing ourselves as bad and not believing we're, because we lose our sense of dignity, not seeing ourselves as worthy of forgiveness. So if you're not worthy of forgiveness, why the hell are you going to go seek repair? Right? And then we're in that loop where relationships don't get repaired and our sense of moral stance doesn't get repaired. And then what motivates us, as you said, which is a great word, Tim. It motivated you. Yeah. And you also, Aubrey, said that.
Yep. Now, why do you think some people recover from moral injury while others seem stuck for years?
I love that question. Okay, so first I'll just say I don't know. But after 25 years of practice and reading a lot, learning a lot beside other clinicians and clergy, I believe this is going to be a really big answer to your question, so we'll unpack this together. Have you all heard of ACEs? Adverse Childhood Experiences? We call them ACEs.
Yeah, during Motherhood and Fatherhood Month, we actually brought that up, the Reverend Tracy and I.
Great. So adverse childhood experiences are things that happen to us, and they happen to all of us. You can't escape, childhood without some injury. But there's a different level of injury that impacts our capacity to heal. Just, attachment impacts that. But what I want to kind of be curious about in my work is, imagine you buy a car and you're driving off the car lot. You're so excited. You've got a new car. Woohoo! And then you look down and there's no brake. And you're like, oh my God, where's the brake? And you start looking around for a brake. There's no brake. Like, you've just bought a car with no brakes. So you take your foot off the gas, you slow it down as much as possible, you pull into a driveway, and you have to hit a tree in order to stop this car from moving, because you've got to not hurt innocent bystanders, right? So the brake and the gas is what I think about when I think about childhood experience, early adverse childhood experiences. We all have... We're born with a limited capacity to control our impulses, right? With this frontal cortex is not developed, but this amygdala that back here that is the gas pedal, we come in the world with that. Like, that is the thing that's there. It lights up. Why? It lights up to help us survive potentially life-threatening situations. You all know 3 of the fears that they say we're born with. Have you ever talked to me? Yes, that's it, Aubrey. As soon as we come into the world, we're like, I'm not doing that.
I'm not talking to anybody.
I think that was just you, love. But yeah. And we could dissect that, but we won't. So, we come into the world with fear of falling, fear of loud noises, and the fear of abandonment, isolation. Because these are the 3 things that from the amygdala back here lights up when those, because we're going to die. We sleep in trees, loud noises, predators, being alone. You're not going to get fed. You're going to die. All of it is set. This whole thing back here is set. Don't die. Basically, that's his job. Amygdala, don't die. And so it's the gas pedal to keep it. Because we don't yet have this prefrontal cortex development, a caregiver acts as our brakes from birth until, it's developed enough for us to do it ourselves. They act as the brakes. So you're with a little kid and they are learning to walk and you say, hey, slow down, buddy. Or they're starting to run and you say, check both ways before you cross the street. You're the brakes for them. Let's imagine that a human being doesn't have an appropriate caretaker because they're absent, they're inconsistent, or they're abusive. That person doesn't get the modeling. That person basically grows into a human being that looks like an adult, just like the car, but it has no brakes, right? And so, of course, they're going to drive into stuff more often. They're going to hit things more often. They're going to cause harm more often. And then the only way to make sense out of that is I must just be a shitty human being. When really, if you look close enough, they just don't have a brake system because they didn't have the modeling as a child to show them what brakes were for. And that never gets developed. So they just constantly have this hypervigilance or shutdown. I mean, hypervigilance can either make us shut down or speed up, right? So the car either never moves, they do nothing They just stay at home, they isolate, or they're on, 90 miles an hour in a 35 mile. They don't know. They don't have brakes. So they either don't move or they're causing immense harm as they move around the world until they have appropriate modeling and skill development around what this is supposed to do, this frontal cortex, and also are safe enough for that to develop. If you're in constant fear for your life and you didn't have any safety in childhood, you don't have time for this to develop. Because when the amygdala is on fire and lit up and danger, danger, Will Robinson, danger, it's like a light switch for this part of the brain. If it's there, it literally turns the lights out, turns it off, so that this, even if it's developed, isn't going to come into action because you're not safe enough for you to have the time and capacity to discern your next step, because there's a frickin' tiger behind you. You don't have time to think like, I wonder if the tiger's hungry. I wonder if you don't have time for that. So if everything's a tiger, then you're essentially moving at 70 miles an hour with no brake system. Or you're at home under the covers, anxiety or depression. Pick your poison.
Little from column A, little from column B for me. But.
Right, seriously. Where does that leave us?
Curious. Hopefully curious. Hopefully that can leave us curious. Like, ooh, what, so maybe I don't have an ACE score of 10. Maybe I have an ACE score of 5. Still, I have an ACE score. I got to take care of myself. I got to be curious. How does that impact the way I'm moving in the world? And believe me, Aubrey knows, like, I kick in, I have gone on full speed, and then my childhood experiences are validated by the situations I'm in, because that's what the brain's doing. It's looking for validation that it's right. And so then I go into, the world of sexual assault prevention. I go into working with families at, with just more abuse than I would even choose to tell you. And all of my beliefs about the world are validated over and over and over. It's a scary, dangerous place. No one is safe. No one can be trusted. So my ACE score of 5 moves to, it's all validated. So it might as well be a 10. I have to be curious. How's my system doing? How are the brakes? What do I need to self-regulate, co-regulate, regulate within community? But nobody can tell that my system's on overdrive by looking at me. Okay, some people probably can, but most people can't. So it looks like I'm a fully functioning adult, but I'm stuck at 5 because of these experiences, and then those experiences are further validated. So the part of me that's making choices is literally 5 years old. I have to choose to reparent myself within community. I have to choose to find spaces where I'm safe enough to do the work. And then I have to have the courage to do it. Which, if I am suffering with moral injury, I may have had the courage at some point, but I might no longer have the hope that it's even possible. Right? And so I won't do the work, not because I don't want to, but I just don't think there's a point to it.
And my experience with that has been that you never reach a point at which you become able to exist in the world without being vulnerable to those propensities. Like, you never arrive at a place where, like, oh, my moral injury is healed. It is something, right, that we have to experience, I think, within community.
Yes.
To have that support enough to function in a different way. But that's
Yes.
always being a choice of, I know I could do it this old way,
Yep.
but I'm going to choose today to do it this new way. And I get to choose that every single day, which I get to, is kind of joking. I get to do that every day. I get to tell myself that it's not 1985 and like move on with my life, right? You know?
And this is where my work with internal family systems comes in, because I know myself to be, my moral stance is grounded in eternal, and this is where my faith comes in too. This is the intersection of spirit and mental health for me. I know myself to be good. Period. Like good. Through and through. Nothing can touch that. From that place of goodness comes calm, compassionate, creative, caring, connected, all the C words in IFS. But parts of me were developed way back then when self, the fully developed frontal, wasn't mature, right? So these protector parts are developed, and they have a role, which is mostly to save my ass. They have a role. They do a really good job at that. And I begin to lean on them because they're very loud and very good at what they do. Self will not fight with parts. Self will go, "Aw, that's so sweet." And so parts can override, parts can drive the bus, as we say, for a long time until, and you all will understand what I mean by this, until those parts say this: I am exhausted. I'm exhausted with serving this role for you. I'm exhausted. That exhaustion can lead to ramping up or shutting down, right? But that is the key. When we are so tired of a certain behavior, then, and we have the skills and support, like you're saying, Aubrey, to look at that, to notice the part, not internalize it, I am this part, but to have some cognitive, neurological, like literally some separation between that part, the behavior, and self, then I can start to unburden the part. So you're right. We don't arrive at some people have, I'll just say, but most of us don't.
Like the Dalai Lama and stuff.
Yeah. And I'm sure if we, went far enough into that, we'd probably see that isn't true. But, but some people have more self energy because they were, because of redemptive suffering or because of childhood modeling and grounding. Those are usually they learn from the redemptive suffering, or they were just given. So this is a very, very long answer to what you said, Tim. How do some people avoid moral collapse? And how do some people not avoid it, right? And it is, we either have the capacity to redeem ourselves in the midst of suffering and feel that others are worth redemption, or we've been modeled this from such a young age, which is, praise be to God, to the parents that are modeling that. Nobody's perfect, but praise be to the caretakers, no matter who that is, that are modeling redemption and redemptive suffering and repair within relationship. That's how we get there, right? One of those ways, we either do the work, which I use IFS to do the work of redeeming myself, returning to self and others, connection, or, I draw on what my parents did offer me when they did, of what it looks like to restore. And then, of course, this comes into my faith practice. We have story after story after story of redemption and reconciliation within the both First Testament and Second Testament within Christian scripture. Just story and story, of which my favorite is Legion. I don't even know if if our listeners or you know of the story of the healing of Legion in the book of Mark. Are you familiar with that at all?
No idea, Milly.
Great.
Faintly remember it, but feel free to let our friends at home know about that story.
So it's in the Gospel of Mark in the Second Testament of Scripture, chapter 5. I believe it's like 1 through 20, if anybody wants to look that up. But, Jesus was a dude that traveled on the margins of, literally in the boundaries between regions. So, and who would a person find especially during that time, of people on the edges of community? Who would have been there? The people who'd been exiled. People are exiled now into prisons or, canceled, or shamed to the point of not belonging. But then it was literally like, okay, you live on the edges, you person with whatever disease or, So Jesus is traveling on the edges and he's meeting all these people. And so at one point they cross over and on a boat and they come to this area and a person who is possessed by demons, and I'm doing air quotes here, but that's how it's understood, possessed by demons, comes up to Jesus and he says to Jesus, "What do you want from me?" Which I just think is an amazing way to go. I'm going to just start doing that now. If somebody comes up and "Hey, what do you want from me?" Just it's hilarious. But he says to Jesus, "What do you want with me, teacher?" And Jesus says, "What's your name?" And he says, "Legion, for we are many." The word legion literally means 7,000 soldiers. So what he's saying is, within me, there are 7,000 warring parts within me. So is he demon possessed or is he burdened beyond capacity of functioning, right? So Jesus says, dude, that's not who you are. That is not who you are. You are healed. I don't think Jesus healed him. Jesus reminded him he's healed. He reminded him of his original intent, of his purpose. He helped him make meaning out of his suffering. He witnessed him. This man that was quite popular and famous during that time, lots of people are talking about him, shows up, witnesses this man's suffering, says to this man, "That's who you think you are. It isn't who you are. You are so much more than that." And so he says to Legion, unburden. He doesn't use that word, but he basically says, no, come out. All those 7,000 soldiers, warriors, leave him. And I love this. He puts them in pigs. And he asks permission to do it. And the pigs are like, sure, cool. And so all these warring parts, which within IFS, the world of IFS, we actually, when we unburden ourselves, we do transfer the burden to something and then let it go. So Jesus is literally participating in IFS. Sorry, Dick Schwartz, you weren't the original person to come up with this. It was actually Jesus. But so he unburdens this man. Then this is the part I love. Sorry, I'm geeking out, talking nerdy about some Gospel of Mark. The man is so unburdened and so grateful, so free, so liberated that he does what any of us would do. He says, "Let me come with you." Because he thinks Jesus healed him. So he's like, man, wherever you're going, I'm going with you. Can I please come with you? Jesus says, no. Go home to your community. Why did he do that? Because he was restored. The whole reason Jesus ever healed anyone was to restore them back to community. So he's like, do not follow me. I don't need one other dude following me around that I have to take care of and feed. And no, go home and be healed and tell other people that it's possible. And so the dude's like, okay. And the passage ends with, he goes home and people are amazed. But also they say to Jesus, can you leave now? That's what they said. Jesus, can you leave now? This is disruptive. But then they're also amazed. So, my faith, I grew up chewing on these stories of not Jesus as saving us from hell. I didn't grow up in a world where hell was a thing. We didn't believe in hell, or we believed in evil, but we didn't believe that it was all powerful. We believed that evil was the consequence of harm done to humans, and that Jesus was restoring us to full dignity. This is the world I grew up in. It was amazing, right? So I have those stories as my moral stance, and they apply to me, but they also apply to everyone I meet because I know them to be true.
Isn't that an interesting concept? That we can, that what we believe about ourselves is so determinative of so much about our happiness in life.
Yes. What we believe about ourselves, we project onto others, like it or not, no matter how smart we are.
Right. And it comes up to me a lot because I'm very judgmental, and I don't like people, which you wanted me to mention.
Yes, except for me.
Except for the ones that I like, and
yes,
we know who they are.
Oh, yes, we do.
Yes,
and we're so grateful because you're just a ball of love.
I am judgmental, like I am, and it's something that I don't want to be, and so I try not to be. But I assume that makes me think that everyone is as judgmental as I am, because what I believe about myself is I'm judgmental. That must be true of other humans, and so all these people must be thinking about me in ways that I think about them.
That's right. So, do you know what the antidote to judgment is?
Tell me.
Curiosity.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You cannot be judgmental and curious in the same moment. So when you notice the judgmental part, so I also want to invite you to change your language. You aren't judgmental. There's a part of you that's judgmental. That part is serving a purpose. It's protecting you, Obs, from a lot, which we won't get into here, but it's protecting you. Say thank you to it. If you just try to get rid of it, look, dude, nobody likes to be fired. That judgmental part of you is doing a job. If you fire it, guess what it's going to do? Get bigger. If you dismiss it, it's going to get bigger. If you tell it to go away, it's going to get bigger. Instead, when we turn towards any part of us, judgmental, critical of others, ourselves, whatever the part is, when we turn towards it with curiosity and say, hey, what's up? What's your name? How old are you? What job do you do? How do you feel about that job? What would you rather be doing if you weren't doing that job? When we ask these questions that come out of real curiosity, the part will tell us what it needs. And when it's ready to unburden and it has the support from our self energy to unburden, it will. And until then, curiosity about yourself and that judgmental part is the only way to get to know anything, right? Not saying, what do you want with me? Like Legion did, but he did that when he was burdened, right? So curiosity might have killed the cat, but it's going to save us.
Now, why is identity so important in healing from moral injury?
Mm-hmm. Well, identity is constructed. Identity outside of I am good is constructed. The only core identity is I am human, I am good. Like that's just our original state. That's how we come in the world. I am good. Very quickly, that's altered. And we form an identity based on, in this culture, primarily what we do, who we're with, our attachment, what we have. Yeah, the possessions we have. We form identities around that which gives us purpose and meaning. Because without purpose and meaning, what the hell is the point? Like, this trip ain't easy for any of us. This trip ain't easy. This journey is hard. It's glorious and wonderful, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it's not easy. So without meaning and purpose, I'm going to flounder. And identities are created, constructed around the things that give us meaning and purpose, which is why moral injury is so caustic and damaging, because moral injury goes to the very fabric of what gives us purpose and meaning by devolving our sense of identity and maybe evolving in a sense of identity that is counter to everything we know ourselves to be, to all of these identities. So if I betray a partner in a marriage, but for 20 years, I have really identified with that as husband or wife, then I meet myself again as a person who betrayed all of that. I might have a collapse of moral stance, a collapse of identity, and that can cause a lot of damage. You know, people will say, gosh, you know, my partner cheated on me and I still haven't gotten over it. I'm like, yeah, dude, because it's not something to get over. You got to work through the moral, existential, spiritual dynamic of that. Not the religious part, but the core sense of how you make meaning out of a world where somebody can lie to you that you thought was this other thing. I mean, that's deep. It's really, really deep.
You know, I'm very interested in the community aspect of everything that we're talking about and how important that is. So one question I have about this process of healing, is that something you think has to happen in the context of a community?
Yes.
And if so, what is it that's happening in community that is so necessary?
Yes.
To the process?
Yes. So going back to our fears that we're born with, you know, falling out of trees, loud noises, abandonment. We eventually become less afraid of falling out of trees. Although some of us hold on to fears of heights forever, and we eventually, you know, become less afraid of loud noises, given the absence of trauma around both of those things. Abandonment, none of us grow out of. Because why? Because no matter how old you get, you don't survive, most of us, without a sense of community and belonging. So I can do all my work, and this is unfortunately the way a lot of mental health work works right now, is it's all about the individual, which is just a consequence of white supremacy, but it's all about me and my process. And when I'm healed, then I'll go back out into community. And that is actually counterproductive because I'm not triggered outside of community much. So I might think I've done all this healing work, but then I get back out into relationship and it all floods right back up, right? I'm in intimate relationships, it comes back up. I'm in relationship with my child, it comes back up. I'm working, it comes back up, right? So that's one reality, is we don't heal outside of relationship. And I believe that that when we make the therapist the primary relationship we're doing the work with, it's like doing the work with AI, because like they're going to tell you what they need to tell you to get you to the next thing. Like you've programmed them to know how to deal with you. Other people in the world haven't been programmed to know how to deal with you. So they're going to say stupid shit and do mean things. And so that's one aspect. We've got to heal within the context of relationship because that's where we're triggered. The other is going back to Jesus and Legion. It is necessary, and going back to as an Episcopal priest, we have within our liturgies the rite of reconciliation. It's a beautiful liturgy that is very underused, not shockingly. And we have communal confession, right? Whereas in the Catholic Church, confession is often done individually and communally. But for us, it's communal. And without communal confession, you're not supposed to go up and receive the sacraments of the Eucharist. First, we have to forgive one another and ourselves. Then we go up to take part in community. But forgiveness and reconciliation is paramount. Easter, again, to nerd out on liturgy, but Easter, the primary point of Easter service, the Easter liturgy going way, way back, is to reconcile those that have been exiled from community back into community. That's the whole point of Easter. It's not Jesus rose from the dead and 3 days later, the groundhog saw, and so we've got 6 more weeks of spring. It's not that. It is the reconciling of the exiled back into community. So if I am healing for my own benefit only, that's not really healing. If I am healing in order to be reconciled to community, whether that's my family, my work, the people I live with, the people I love, when I am then the belonging, when I come back into community, the belonging there, the being received there, is the fruit of the healing and will sustain the healing further. But if I'm only doing this in my head and in isolation, I haven't actually gotten the benefit of healing yet. That's why Jesus says, no, man, go home. Go home to your people, receive the blessing of your healing, which is that of belonging again, being reconciled with. So then I also think we have to have witnesses to our healing. Those, which is a small circle, I believe, of people who really know what we're struggling with, who witness our growth and validate our growth, affirm our growth, and support us in the process. So for all of those reasons, and this is why moral injury is not just a psychological reality we should be worried about. It's a public health issue. Moral injury is a public health issue. When 75% of the women in the prison I work with are, and I believe it's greater than this, survivors of sexual violence, we don't need prison, we need a treatment center. Right? Come on. Let's look at the injuries that got people here. But this is a public health issue. Trauma is a public health issue. Moral injury is a public health issue. And, Jesus was all about public health. That's what he was doing. And we should be too, as clergy, as mental health providers, and just as good citizens, be concerned with how these issues of early childhood experiences, moral injury, PTSD, are impacting our capacity to function in a society that values justice, equity, and the common good.
Gotcha. Now, if there's one message you'd want our friends at home to remember a week from now, what would it be?
It would be that moral injury is a social wound, and therefore the healing of moral injury is a social process, and that you don't have to do it alone.
That's a great message, and I guess my closing is always find inspiration, and I think some people do find inspiration in fiction.
Yes.
And trying to make sense of the world by consuming, books and movies and stories and poetry and the Bible for some people.
Yes.
Is there any when you think about the world of characters, is there anybody that you look back and say, they were doing a really good job? They're a good example of someone who has had this art.
Okay, so you're going to make fun of me, but it's Friends Talking Nerdy. So, Spider-Man. I'm obsessed with Spider-Man, and I'm not getting paid by anybody who makes Spider-Man. I know there's another movie coming out, but I swear I'm not here for that. But do you remember Spider-Man 3? I don't know if you all watch Spider-Man, but Spider-Man 3, No Way Home. Okay. When he is taken over by the black suit, and he's, desperate, the more he tries to rip it off, the more it clings to him. But then he has to go through a process of reconciliation, healing, forgiveness. In fact, at one point, he's covered in the dark suit, and he's like, "Rawr," and somebody says something, and he goes, "If you want forgiveness, go to religion." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, Spider-Man, let's do that. Let's go to religion." But he does heal, right? But he has to look at shame for the deaths of people he's loved, that he believes he's caused. And he has to look at greed, because remember, he's getting real haughty right before this suit takes him over. He's like, "I'm so popular. Everybody loves me. Look at the kids, like blah, blah, blah. Everybody wants to be me." And he's not listening to his partner anymore. Like, he has no capacity to hear her. She's like, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I have had that same experience." And she literally says, "This isn't about you." He thinks everything's about him. He's freaking Spider-Man, right? And so he's taken over. He becomes somebody he doesn't know himself to be. And it's going to consume him, which is what shame does to us. It will eat us up from the inside, which is, the biggest consequence of moral injury is just getting eaten up from the inside. And so he has to be witnessed in order to heal. He has to come back into relationship. He has to struggle, but not so much that it annihilates him. So anyway, that's my TED Talk on Spider-Man. But if anybody wants to talk more about Spider-Man, give me a shout out, because I'm kind of obsessed.
Well, all I could think about while you were talking about that was Mad Max, and how does this relate to Mad Max? But we could go on and on all day.
We could do a whole other podcast on moral injury and the healing of it within community with films and movies and song. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere, right? And it was the basis of the Truth and Reconciliation process, not fiction. I wish it was, but the basis of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa to heal after apartheid. I mean, it is addressing the truth and forgiving the most violent offenders was the basis of everything they were trying to do during that process, which is something that really I'm hoping to explore more, because they didn't use the words moral injury then, but that is what they were addressing. How did they do it? What were the consequences? Like, super exciting.
Post-war Germany also comes to mind.
Yeah. Current world Germany comes to mind. You can't go anywhere without seeing, a shout out to the evils and atrocities of that time. You can't go anywhere without seeing it. They're trying to tell the truth everywhere. Whereas here in this country, and then this could be a whole other podcast too, we shut down the truth. Oh, no. We're not those people. We're good. We're just good. Because we don't have enough self-energy to address our failings without being consumed by guilt, shame, without being consumed by shame, right? So we got to learn how, but that takes time. It takes time. So hopefully we'll get there.
Hopefully, yeah. But before we wrap up here, there's one question I wanted to ask, and that is, what is the funniest Professor Aubrey story you have to tell our friends at home?
Oh, well, there's so many, but because it's on my mind, I will just say we were, 19, 20. I don't even know how old we were.
It was a long time ago. Let's just say that.
It was at least 10 years ago. And we were hanging out down in Knoxville in the old city. And there was a street preacher across the street shouting about stuff and angry and bitter and just not pleasant. And he was really messing up our day. He was like killing the vibe. So Aubrey, without any warning at all, stands on the table. We're outside. We're sitting outside. Stands on the table, fist in the air, and just starts yelling, "Fuck shit up! Fuck shit up!" over and over. And I just remember staring up at her and being like, "Oh, I love her so much." I love her. And then we walked out and we went and knelt in front of the street preacher and just, I don't know what we were doing, but that was just one afternoon with Aubrey. And there were many, many just like it, Tim. We could have a whole podcast on that too.
I mean, you experienced me here in the city that I love, with people that I love, with the population I generally say are my people. You should have seen me in the South. That's all I gotta say.
Well, if it's anything like you in the car.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, trapped. Exactly. Feeling trapped and having no brakes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Exactly. Well, thank you all for a lovely conversation and for highlighting really important work in the world and allowing people to come on here and nerd out about it. It's so fun.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your day as well. We definitely appreciate it, and we'd love to have you back on at some point.
Good. Yeah, I would love to.
You've got tons of things to talk about. We can quiz you about for sure.
Yeah, let's get together and talk about the prison industrial complex next time.
Let's do that.
Okay, cool. I'll see you then. You all have a wonderful day.
As well, you as well. And for our friends at home, each week we have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
So long.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
on YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Bye, friends.